Let me tell you a secret. A cold, dark secret about myself. I love Rune Factory. Yes, behind this mask of an amateur YouTuber you just met, I like a game where all I do is battle monsters, plant strawberries, and romance unicorns. All kidding aside, I am a huge fan of Harvest Moon's spin-off Rune Factory. Or is it Story of Seasons? Which is it? I own most of the games in the series, and I have spent hundreds of hours of each of them ever since I was a kid. There's just something about going on a typical fantasy adventure while spending most of your time in a slice-of-life village. It's kind of like a realistic depiction of Dungeons and Dragons, but without the medieval taxes. Nobody was prepared when Rune Factory's development company Neverland declared bankruptcy shortly after the release of Rune Factory 4, and left the series in the gutters for many years. Everyone, including my loved ones, all believed that this would be the end of Rune Factory as we know it. But I stood with hope, and after years of patience and a little ounce of faith, Rune Factory came back to life, with a remastered edition of Rune Factory 4 on Nintendo Switch, and the long-awaited sequel, Rune Factory 5, finally getting off the ground after nearly 8 years. Was it worth the wait? Well, let's dig it up and start planting. Before we begin, we must select our protagonist, a boy who, strangely enough, isn't called body type number 1. We see him lying down in the forest with no memory of his past. Who is he and where did he come from? Who cares when a little fox girl's in trouble? This leads us to the tutorial. Once the monster is slayed, we safely return the child home to a humble village named Rigbarth, thus allowing me to finally name my character. I could have gone for an ordinary name, but I decided to give his character something unique. A name taken from the best character of a subpar live-action Disney film. Ladies and gentlemen, Hakim! So Hakim is introduced to this tiny little thing named Livia, who decides to give you a home along with this gigantic calendar, plus an entire farm field, in exchange for joining a monster fighting organization called Seed. Get it? 'Cause you're a farmer and you like to plant seeds and other things. Thanks to Captain Livia, you are now a citizen of Rigbarth, and you're introduced yourself to the locals, like the blacksmith, the baker, and his wife, the mayor, who happens to be the sexy doctor, and nah! And last but not least, the many bachelors and bachelorettes. This can't be a Rune Factory game, let alone a Harvest Season of Story Moon game, without being a farmer. You plant seeds of various greens and edibles on the soil, water them, lace it with drugs, and wait for it to all grow so you can cook it or ship it to the black market. When you're done, you can go on a stroll to bask at the humble village of Rigbarth, or go outside the town gate and venture off to a beautiful monster-infested forest. Grassy fields, deserts, mountains, and even clouds. But let's take a pause and just appreciate just how beautiful this game is. I mean, look at that boulder.
That is a nice boulder.
But it's not all planting and capitalism. Another important aspect of Rune Factory's gameplay is social interaction. You spend a great deal of time hanging out with the town's colorful, diverse residents, as well as meeting old friends from past games. And if you're polite enough, you can bring your friends to battle, including the children. Come on, Julian, you can handle the vicious goblin all by yourself. Speaking of which, poor little Hina has been separated from her mom, who seems to be trapped inside the enchanted forest. With my handy-dandy longsword and my vicious watering can, I go off to save Hina's mom. Now we come across the most important aspect of Rune Factory that makes it distinct from Harvest Moon, which is its hack-and-slash combat. You carry and use a variety of many weapons to choose from and master, like swords, fisticuffs, and magic, against a vast collection of monsters to fight. But you don't need to fight all of them. Like my trusty Wooly James, you can befriend monsters, send them off to your monster barn where they can help tidy the farm and I forgot to feed James. At last, we come across our first of many Digimon boss fights. After we slay the beast, it turns back to, whoa, Hina's mom is pretty hot. Look, Hakim even bridal carries her on the back of a dragon. Is this love at first sight? Sadly, this game doesn't allow you to marry Hina's mom. You can only marry men or women belonging to your age group, which is a shame because all the moms in this game are effing hot. When you return home, you're given a forest dragon, one of 5 dragons that gives you more farmland to grow crops, and more crops comes profit, and more profit means buying gifts, and more gifts means more dates, and more dates means hearts to your special someone, and more hearts leads to weddings, and more weddings leads to, and more leads to babies, and more babies leads to. I married Fuka, the red fox maiden who works at the local restaurant. Hey, why does it look like I'm eating orange juice with a fork? Oh well, at least it's not as weird as Pokemon's eating animation. Hey look, the village has new neighbors. Let's go see them. Nice. 9 out of 10. 4 out of 10. I really enjoyed this game. 5 has everything I want for a new Rune Factory game. Not just the action-packed seed planting or the calm collective monster fighting, but the village life. But there's so much more. There's a bounty hunting system where you hunt powerful monsters, unlocking special privileges like breaking into people's homes. And then there's the village stories where you get to experience wacky adventures with these colorful characters. And then there's the festivals, each one being unique from the other, from competing with the best crops to headbutting beans. There's just so much to do, so much to like, and Alright, time to take off the nostalgia goggles and confess the truth. This game has problems. For starters, the presentation is kinda lame. While I think the level design is nice, the game looks like it came out of the Nintendo Wii, with poorly textured models, plus frame rate problems. And do I even need to discuss the pop-ins and out-of-sync audio? Another issue I had was the story just wasn't as engaging as previous installments, and it didn't help that I found the cast of characters lackluster. Don't get me wrong, there are enjoyable characters, and of course there are standouts, but most of them aren't very interesting and have little to do with the overall story. But the one thing that got on my nerves was the game's passage of time. For whatever reason, the game's clock system feels like I've been playing for a literal hour. Seriously, it's like the clock is 3 seconds slow and it takes an eternity to move. Is there more? Well, Rune Factory is not a recommendable game. Like all Story of Harvest Season's Moon titles, it's an acquired taste. Yes, Rune Factory has boss fights and monsters, but most of the time you're doing this. And this. And this.
Time to tackle another detour.
This is how most of the game is. And in this age of hyper-action set pieces and rich melodrama, this won't be a game for you. But if you have the patience, the drive, and the willingness to push through, you will get a rewarding game. Rune Factory 5 is a flawed game, but not a bad one. While I don't like it as much as its predecessor, it had the right amount of content and coziness to keep me going. But even with all of its problems, Rune Factory 5, most importantly, was a necessary game. The developers weren't making Game of the Year, they were making a simple sequel. And you know what? For a revival of a long-dead franchise, it was good enough. I was so thrilled and very happy to know that despite its faults, Rune Factory 5 turned out to be a financial hit. So successful that both a new installment and a spin-off are in development. It's so good to be a Rune Factory fan, and 5 has shown me that it's never too late to hold on to hope. So until Rune Factory 6 comes out, grab your sword, 10-year-old sidekick, and your sheep, and fight that monster in the castle. Oh no, run! Everybody run! Run!